Who is it?
Okay, I'm going to start to stream.
Here, it's Jasper Cardinelli. He wants to watch it.
I don't know how to do that.
All right. Hi, everyone. We're live on YouTube Live right now. And sorry, we're getting a little bit of a later start on today's.
He wants to watch it.
Today's
I
event.
don't know how to do
We've
that.
been having a few technical.
Hi,
everyone. We're live on YouTube Live right now. And sorry, we're getting a little bit of a later start on today's.
He wants to watch it.
Today's
I
event.
don't know how
Let's
to
make
do
sure we're
that.
going to have a few folks here. And we're live on YouTube Live right now. And sorry, we're getting a little bit of a later start on today's background noise. Okay, much better. So welcome again, everyone. Thanks again for joining. We're here today to celebrate the Monterey 250 and our anniversary here in the city of Monterey. We again having a couple of technical difficulties, waiting for former Mayor Dan Albert Sr. to join on video. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and get started, and wanted to take a few moments to introduce everyone and welcome everybody to this historic day.
You're not on yet.
Enjoying a gathering of Monterey's four
They just won't have your face.
mayors spanning 5 decades. We have with us today, leading our event, Mayor Clyde Roberson, currently serving as mayor since 2014. He served 2 consecutive terms as mayor from 1983 to 1987 and was on the Monterey City Council from 1981 to 1990 and from 1996 to 2006. We also have with us our esteemed former mayor, Peter Coniglio, who, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Peter, serving on the council from 1970 and as mayor of Monterey from 1973 to 1976. We also have former Mayor Dan Albert, who served 10 terms as mayor from 1986 through 2006 and 2 terms on the council from 1979 to 1986. And last but not least, former Mayor Chuck Della Sala, who served on the city council here in Monterey from 2002 to 2014 and as mayor from 2006 to 2014. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our current mayor, Mayor Clyde Roberson. Mayor Clyde.
All right, thank you very much, Nat. And our introducer for everyone was our not so new anymore, Assistant City Manager, Nat Rojanasathira. And we want to thank him and Lori Huelga, Eric Palmer, and the entire city team who has put together some slides, which I think everybody's going to really enjoy. But hello, everyone who is watching. It's really a pleasure for all of us to be together. It's just a highlight of the season for me to be here with my fellow mayors. We're going to be sharing with you, not the entire history of Monterey, of course, but just some of the highlights that we all experience. And as you hear that, what you're going to notice is something very interesting. You're going to see a continuity of what one mayor and his team did and how it connects to another mayor and how it connects to today. And so our history is one of teamwork and working together. And oftentimes the mayor is a figurehead and represents all of the people who love Monterey, who care for Monterey. And we all have that in common. And we think about all of the volunteers, the nonprofits, the residents, the businesses that make this such a special place. And our history is one of them. Think about our little city. It only has a population of about 28,000 people. But there's Cannery Row, the Monterey Bay Aquarium, Fisherman's Wharf and Wharf 2, downtown, the Conference Center, the Cupo Malera Adobes, Del Monte Center, New Monterey, language capital of the world, the DLI and the Naval Postgraduate School and Fleet in America, the Monterey Bay Marine Sanctuary, the Monterey Sports Center and our recreation and sports, the recreational trail, all of those very unique to such a small city. And among all those values is, of course, our love and joy of history and the dedication that all of us have to preserve it. So we're going to start a little slideshow, and I'm going to be sharing with you. some narrative that goes with it. And to want to thank all of you for joining us. This isn't exactly the way we planned on celebrating, but as everyone else, because of the pandemic, we have changed how we share with you. We wish we could be with you in person. I had the opportunity to attend Monterey High School graduation out at Laguna Seca, and I had the chance to see an online graduation at ISM. And so this is how we're celebrating these days. In fact, I think one of our mayors celebrated a birthday online Zoom. And there were so many people there. I think he filled up the 2 or 3 screens of all the people who loved him. And he knows who he is and he can tell us later. But so one of our mayors had a Zoom birthday as well. So obviously we start with the early history of Monterey with the native Rumsian people who lived here for thousands of years before the Euro-Americans landed. And the Rumsian people are one of the 8 groups of the Ohlone. When I was teaching 3rd grade, we that was part of our study, and we actually went to the lower Presidial Knoll, where you can still see the mortises and some of the shells and artifacts at the lower Presidial Knoll. Then the Spanish explorer Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo came through the bay in 1542. Then 1602, Sebastian Vizcaíno set foot on the shores. He described Monterey Bay, but it was difficult to describe because yes, we're a bay, but we're also in an ocean. So it wasn't until actually in June 3rd, 1777, that we had the landing of Father, now Saint Sarah, and Captain Portola. You can learn more about this with Jim Conway's Presidio, Pueblo, and Port, and Dennis Copeland and Jeannie Combs, a Monterey album, Life by the Bay, all 3 of whom are Monterey, retired Monterey employees and highly valued, who love history just like us. So moving on, why June 3rd? If Father Sarah and Portola were to come to Monterey today, there would obviously be a lot of changes. But there was one thing they would recognize. They would recognize the Lower Presidial Knoll because it has been preserved. So think about that, 250 years ago. They might wonder what that recreational trail is with all the people on bicycles and surreys. And what are those 2 wharves doing there? But they would actually recognize that the Presidio. And that is one of the things that makes this all so special. So June 3rd is when they officially claimed Monterey for Spain, of course. Normally we would be celebrating on the lawn with all of you, but we're going to celebrate today virtually, and we hope you enjoying our slides. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Nat. And Nat, I think you're going to do a short video for us.
That's correct. We're going to show a short video here, and this is a video that was produced in-house by Eric Palmer with help from our Museums and Cultural Arts Office. And we look forward to watching it right now. Thanks. the video. Really remarkable video that, again, Eric Palmer from our team put together. And for those who would like to see it or share it, you can watch it at youtube.com/City of Monterey. Now back to Mayor Roberson to discuss how we are a city of firsts.
Oh, good, thanks. And I'm sure for everyone watching and all of us who've enjoyed those parades over the years, brought back some great memories. As they say, everyone loves a parade. So let's think about Monterey as a city of firsts. And as we go through these, just to ask yourself, how many of these firsts are still here? How many of them can we still enjoy? And it's just so gratifying that we can. We have a living history. We have the first building designed by an architect in California, the Royal Presidial Chapel. First custom house in California. First printing press in California, and the first jury trial. The first official raising of the American flag, and known as Sloat's Landing. And then Colton Hall, construction from 1847 to 1849, which has an interesting history. Colton, the first alcalde or mayor, and built by not forced labor, but any of the folks who, instead of going to the Monterey jail, they helped build Colton Hall. And so the first convention was there. And you can still go upstairs to Colton Hall and see it as it was, still unlit. And the first theater in California. Someday we hope open again, because many of you might remember when you had a chance to go see some of the plays and enjoy that. California's first brick house is still there. You can go down by the wharf and find that. California's first public library. Obviously, the current library wasn't it, but it was part of Walter Colton's legacy as well. And this one was very interesting. Destination of the first oil pipeline in California in 1904. Can you imagine, folks, if we tried to put an oil pipeline through Monterey today? So those are really some absolutely fun firsts, and we can still visit those. That's just so gratifying. So Nat, am I going to turn it back to you momentarily, or?
Yeah, happy to do that. And both Lori Falca, our public information officer, and I will be moderating this discussion. And we like to start off with our current mayor, Mayor Roberson, to tell a story about their time in Monterey, challenges and accomplishments that have meaning to them while they served as Monterey's mayor. And we'll hear from all of our esteemed guests and former mayors. We will start with Mayor Clyde. Mayor Clyde, as I mentioned before, has had the honor to serve as 24 years on the Monterey City Council, as well as 5 times as mayor and 4 years on our Library Board of Trustees. And here are some fantastic photos from Mayor Clyde's time and your inaugurations. I'm sure it resonates with you. They bring back some interesting memories, don't they?
They do. Hey, I'm aging right before my eyes.
So,
you know, it's so interesting. The first center picture of my wife and me, I think that was on the rec trail on our tandem bike. And as it turns out, our meet anniversary, my wife and I met on June 3rd.
wow.
41 years ago. So
Oh my goodness.
there you go. And she still looks exactly the same. So let's talk about the Monterey Sports Center a little bit and its origin. And I'm going to try to be, if I'm going fast, I want to make sure we stay with it as much as we can within our time frame. So as a 5th grade teacher at Bayview in Monterey, I would ask my students to write about their city. And one of the things I would always say, well, tell me what you like about your city. So the following week I would say, now don't tell me what you don't like. Well, 5th graders, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, tell me what you think our city needs. And this was about 1983, 84 in my first iteration as mayor. And 2 years in a row, the students said, you know what, it's cold here. You wouldn't know by today, of course. It's cold here. We need an indoor swimming pool. Then another child said, in their essay. Well, you know what? A gym would be nice too. Wouldn't it be nice if we could have something like that in the city of Monterey? So I always tell the students when I go meet with them in their different classes, you are the parents of the Monterey Sports Center, and they really enjoy that. Coincidentally, in 1981 or so, and Mayor Dan can help me with that, because as I said, none of us does this alone. Mayor Dan was there with me at that time. We were on the council together for many years, a real honor. And I had the pleasure of being on the council with Mayor Chuck as well. Sorry, Mayor Peter, you and I weren't on the council together, but we would have had a good time. And so in 1981, we purchased the Beatty Ford site, not with the idea of a sports center being there, but when the community decided the sports center was where they wanted to go, that's where the sports center went, to the Beatty Ford site. At the same time, Mary Jacques Thomas Trust Fund had about $4 million in it that could be used for that. We had an advisory vote. And so the day that the sports center opened, it was paid for, which over the years, I'm really happy about that. And again, the connection. We did a fundraising, and Mayor Peter was the chair of the fundraising efforts at the Monterey Sports Center. And again, Mayor Dan was on the council and mayor when it actually opened. So that's a little bit of a fun story I hope you enjoyed about the swim gym, as we called it. It took us a long time to get us to start calling it the Monterey Sports Center.
There's some photos from the Sports Center. There's an article here from 1988.
Right. Well, it was somewhat, I wouldn't say it was completely controversial. I would say people had other thoughts for the use of that property, which I certainly recognize and acknowledge. And we're looking at the slide. Sorry, you're going to hear probably a steam shovel coming up my street. We're doing a lot of our street reconstruction because of Measure S. But I'm sure Mayor Dan remembers the slide and putting the slide in the Sports Center as an attraction. And we said, absolutely. I forget, what did it cost? 50,000, 150,000, something like that. And let's, we'll morph right now to the Neighborhood and Community Improvement Program. And again, I'd like to share how we started that. So I'll wait for the slides to catch up. There we go. As you look at the slides, it's been called for a long time the Neighborhood Improvement Program, but it's actually the Neighborhood and Community Improvement Program. And you're going to see a lot of community-wide projects, from the library to ball fields to streets to the Emergency Operations Center that our police and fire operate out of, as well as a lot of improvements in the city. Since its inception in 1985, it's been about an $80 million infusion of funds. And this is how it originated. One day, Richard Rossello and I had been to a meeting at the fairgrounds. And as we left, we of course value the importance of tourism to the city of Monterey, a big part of our budget. But Richard said, you know what, there should be a way that residents can see a direct benefit to tourism. We know indirectly, and maybe we don't understand enough how tourism benefits the city of Monterey. I wonder if there's a direct way where tourist dollars can reach us at a community and neighborhood level. Well, I thought about that and I thought, that's really a good idea. So that's when on 1985, we had a charter amendment and created the Neighborhood Improvement Committee. And again, it's a connections. Mr. Rossello has been on the NCIP board for all its years from its inception. And we have 17 active neighborhood associations, each of whom has a representative on the committee. And we're very, very grateful for that. So now if you want to swing through a little bit of the skate park, this is Montecito Park. Love the kids. No, that's Kona. That's actually Kona, right? Casanova, no.
Remember what year this one was from?
That was fairly recent.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, and talk about how everything's connected. The neighborhood, the NCIP committee had recommended, and we funded a mural on the rec trail, and that mural is a painting of what the lower Presidio knoll would have looked like, the landing place of Sara and Portola. So if you're walking the trail and you stop and look at that mural, and then you look up the hill, it looks the same. So we thank everyone, including the mayors that are with me today, for preserving our city, for keeping our small town feeling. And lastly, the language capital of the world, of course, something that we all value so much. I started teaching in Monterey in the late 60s, 1970. And the Defense Language Institute was an important institution, but nothing like it is today. And it was completely open. 9/11, of course, changed access. But I commuted by bicycle. I was fortunate enough to do that from where I live on one side of Monterey to the other side. Had the real fortune of teaching children of instructors. 90% of the instructors at the DLI are native speakers. Their children, all religions and ethnic groups, and also some of the military who were attached there and taught their kids. And so that was so gratifying. And then we had the expansions. Our longtime city manager, Fred Muir, was a colonel in the Army. I'm sure we all remember that. And his job was the expansion of the Defense Language Institute. So as I continue to ride my bike through the DLI, I could see more and more expansion, the barracks, the instructional buildings. But interestingly enough, the lower Presidio that the city leases from the Army is very much original and intact. And we always talk about our language capital of the world, which includes the Naval Postgraduate School and Middlebury and CSUMB, MPC, and all of our elementary and high schools, which are teaching languages. And many of the celebrations that we have around Monterey are based on our language capital of the world. There are 50,000 linguists trained at the DLI currently worldwide in service, and around 3,000 students graduate each year. And you could, by taking a look at the languages and what's been emphasized over the years, you can really find out what the state of the country was at that time. When I first started teaching at Hilltop, there was a huge Vietnamese department and a large Russian department. And as I remember, may have been a small, no, there was an Arabic department, because I remember playing tennis with some of my Iraqi and Irani friends who were teaching that. And so obviously the Vietnamese department shrunk, the Chinese department has grown, the Russian department got small. And then one day I was talking to a student and I asked, oh, you're at the DLI? Because he was volunteering. And he said, yes, I'm teaching Russian. I said, oh, how is that department? He says, it's getting bigger and bigger all the time. I said, really? And why is that? And he said, one word, two words, Vladimir Putin. And so the Russian department's gotten large again. And of course, the Chinese, the various forms of Arabic. But it's then 9/11, of course, closed the Presidio to general access. And also all of the locals knew that was the way to get from one side of town to the other. But even though we have a fence there, we still have a fantastic relationship with our language students, our language military installations, who teach in our schools, who go to our places of worship, who are on our school boards. And so I know the military who come here are very, very appreciative of coming to Monterey, and this is the place where it belongs. And Dan Albert a little later will tell you the great efforts that he and his team made to keep our two military installations and language schools here.
And every quarter, our council recognizes members of the military who are at DLI, and we ask them to speak. How long has that tradition been, Mr. Mayor?
Well, see, I'll have to ask Mayor Chuck. Mayor Chuck, you were doing the quarterly presentations. Mayor Dan, were you doing them too? Mayor Chuck, do you recall? Chuck, you'll have to unmute, please. There you go.
I have the quarterly presentations of the DLI pages, and I believe Dan Albert did as well.
Yes, good question.
I don't know whether you could hear me or not, but you can't see me, but I'm here.
Okay, Dan,
That's just
thank
as
you.
well, Dan.
Wait, don't we love
Let's try it
technology?
again.
There you go.
Hey,
You can see that handsome face.
We can.
oh,
You look younger now than ever.
hey, I like your t-shirt, by the way. In fact, I think we can do that. We're all wearing 250 Monterey t-shirts, and we'll have a commercial a little later, and Lori will sell you one.
You
All
guys
right,
look great in your shirts.
Obviously, we could talk. Each of us could talk forever, but I want to turn it now to Lori, who's going to introduce our good friend who has such a wonderful history of Monterey. So Lori, if we can turn it to you, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Clyde. It was great listening to all those great stories. And
Thank you.
former Mayor Dan, it's great that you're on and we can see you. You guys all look great in your shirts. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here today with all of you, and such an honor for me to be able to introduce former Mayor Peter Coniglio. Mr. Coniglio served on the council from 1970 and as mayor of Monterey from 1973 to 1976. So welcome, Mr. Coniglio, and thank you so much for being a part of this celebration.
Okay, we're going to have to ask Mayor Peter to unmute. Nat, can you do that for him or not? There we go.
Lori, am I on? Hello.
Yes, you're on. We can hear you.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and my former mayors. It's an honor and a pleasure to be present with you. In general, we are all blessed to live in this beautiful little community. I was born and raised in Monterey and lived here all my life, except for college, when I was in the Air Force, law school. And ever since then, I have lived here in Monterey and raised my family here. The Monterey that we see today is a little different than the one that I grew up in. And that's because of change that happens in life. Change is really the only constant that we're faced with. Some change is good, some change is bad, but change there will be. I thought maybe I would touch on what I feel are some of the major changes that affected the future and vision of Monterey. I don't mean to suggest that the ones that I will talk about very briefly are the only changes that affected our city, but they're ones that I feel that are particularly important. And with that, I will start off and talk about the decline and termination of the Monterey sardine fishing and canning industry, which for a period of over 50 years was the major economic impact and engine for the peninsula. There were about 26 canneries and reduction plants, over 75 to 80 large, beautiful fishing vessels, and a large amount of workers in the cannery. This little village developed what became the largest sardine industry in the world during World War II. Our fleet caught between 300 and 400,000 tons of sardines. It was a dramatic industry. And when it died, it changed the character of Monterey very dramatically. The decline started about 1948 and lasted over about 10 years. And in 1958, it came to a close when the last cannery, Hobden, which is now the site of the aquarium, closed. A very dramatic impact, and the city has recovered over these years and come out of what was felt to be a death knell to Monterey. The loss of the industry changed the complexion of Monterey. One example, it changed the character of Fisherman's Wharf. Prior to that, Fisherman's Wharf was a fisherman's wharf. And when the industry collapsed, they began to change Fisherman's Wharf more to a tourist attraction. And today, it represents one of the major assets of our city. Going on to the next thing that I think dramatically changed Monterey was the closing of Fort Ord. Monterey and the peninsula have always been a military town, starting way back when Gaspar de Portola and Father Sara said the first mass in 1770 up at the Presidio. We've always had a military component in our town, and they've always been very important economically and culturally to our city. And when Fort Ord closed, a lot of us felt that it was going to be very difficult to overcome that dramatic change. But as the years go on, we have realized some very great benefits from the closing of Fort Ord. One of the major ones, of course, is the establishment of the college out there. And the closing has given the cities of Seaside and Marina a great deal of benefits. And there's a whole new world out at Fort Ord to be created, and it's being created. And we are all the beneficiaries of that. The next thing I would like to talk about is the rezoning and the building of the Del Monte Center. Why do I think that was so important? First of all, it's a great asset to the city, and although it had a difficult beginning, today it is doing very well, and we're all very proud of it. But one of the effects that the rezoning of the Del Monte Center had, it changed what was being considered as the direction for the development of urban renewal. Now, why do I say that? Urban renewal originally was destined to be a retail center oriented to the water. When the city decided to rezone Del Monte Center and build the center, that changed the impact on what could be done at urban renewal. We were already suffering with urban renewal, which I'll talk about shortly. But with the rezoning of Del Monte Center, the idea that urban renewal would accommodate a retail center was no longer possible. It is a great center now, and we're very proud of it. The next thing that I think was very significant to our city was the building of the Monterey Bay Aquarium, a beautiful asset, a gift to this city by the Packard family. I was privileged to serve on that board for 9 years. And it is and has been the cause of the resurgence of Canby Row, which was a ghost town after the collapse of the sardine industry, and today represents one of the vital and vibrant areas of our city. Thank you, Mr. Packard, for making that gift to our city. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the Monterey Conference Center. The Monterey Conference Center was a solution that we offered to solve urban renewal. And a lot of you that lived in Monterey for this time know that the urban renewal project was an absolute disaster. The core of our downtown was torn up, and it was a hole for almost 16 years. And we tried desperately to get someone to come in and develop it, and it wouldn't work. The last gasp was when the JCPenney company indicated that they were going to build a 200,000 square foot building about where the conference center is now, anchored by a 4-story garage. And although we weren't very happy with JCPenney, we were happy to have someone solve our problem with urban renewal. Well, in about 1970, JCPenney had a change of heart and decided that they were not going to participate. Frankly, the city was devastated. We were broke. We had no prospects for the solution to urban renewal. So we went back to the federal government, HUD, and told them we need help. We've got to do something to resurrect this program. So they recognized that it was a dire need, and they authorized another study. And that's when the concept of the urban renewal was born. Now, I must tell you, as you probably know, that program, that concept was extremely controversial from day one. And we literally had to fight our way through to get permission to build it. We finally got permission for the original concept, which included a 1,400 seat performing arts theater on top of the center. And that was for our local residents. We finally got permission through our local city, having to fight every step. And we were ready to break ground when the Coastal Commission came into existence. And we had to stop everything and go through that process. It took us an additional year to finally get the approval of the Coastal Commission. I made 6 appearances before the State Coastal Commission arguing for approval, and we finally got it, together with the Performing Art Theater. Well, again, we were ready to break ground, and that area, as you may or may not know, is a National Historic Preserve because the Custom House is located in the area, and the Custom House is the most historic building in Western United States because that's where the United States took possession of over 600,000 acres from Mexico. And so this commission sent me a letter, or telegram, a cease and desist letter saying, stop everything. We're sending a panel out there to see what you people are doing. So they came out and we had a full day's hearing. And they decided much to our chagrin, I was very upset that we could have the conference center or the theater, but not both, and we had to make a choice. I even challenged them and said, what are you carpetbaggers doing in our town? Tell me why it's okay to have a 4-story building, but not a 5-story building. Isn't that a matter of judgment? This is our town. Let us make that judgment. And they said, sorry, Mayor, take your choice. So of course we had no choice. We had to build the center. And we went ahead and built the center. Now, I must also tell you that we had some doubt in our mind because at that time, there weren't many small towns like Monterey that had a conference center. Today, that's a different story. Most areas have their own conference center. So at the time, we were somewhat worried that the conference center might not be a success and we would just compound our problem. But thank God the Lord was with us, and the center has been very successful. And 2 years ago, the city embarked on a renovation program and spent $60 million. And today we have a state-of-the-art center. It has been and will continue to be, I hope, a major asset for our city. And we're anxious to get it open again. Well, those are some of the thoughts that I have about the history of Monterey. As I said initially, they don't represent all of the significant things that have happened in our city. You know, as each of us took our office in our administration, we were each faced with different issues, and we had to use our energies to solve those particular issues. During my time as mayor and city councilman, urban renewal was the major issue, and we had to solve it. I'm happy to have participated in that solution. And I want to say to my former mayors, you know, I'm pretty good health. I just turned 91 degrees, and I'm okay, except that I need a haircut. And if I don't get one soon, I'm going to have to buy a violin, I guess. But it's been an honor to be part of Monterey. And I tell my children that every day. So thank you for the privilege of sharing some of these thoughts with you. And again, I'm very happy to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Peter. And anyone who's ever seen the pictures of the urban renewal or before it was renewed, it absolutely looked like a war zone. And I just can imagine when you're dealing with the Coastal Commission and bankers and the community that how difficult that was. So you did it. Thank you. And so Nat, would you like to introduce our next speaker, please?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. It's really an honor for me to introduce our next speaker, Mayor Dan Albert Sr. Dan, as I shared earlier, served 10 years as mayor from 10 terms as mayor from 1986 to 2006, and including 2 terms on the city council from 1979 through 1986. So Mayor Dan, would you like to share some of your thoughts and your perspectives on your term?
Yeah, yes, I would. I don't have the same problem that Peter has. I don't have to go to the barber. So anyway, you know, I'm just going to repeat that I was on the Parks and Recreation Commission for 2 years, and also I was on the City Council for 6, and then I was mayor for 20 years. And the reason I say that by my side all the time was that lovely wife of mine. In fact, she's here today by my side, and that's Joanne. When I first became the mayor, things that happened were quite interesting. One of the things that we have a very prestigious city, and so we have a lot of visitors that come to our city. And I was just a short time, and one of the visitors that was going to come to our city was we got a letter saying that the King of Spain, Juan Carlos, would like to visit the city of Monterey and Carmel. So we were elated, and what he said he would like to do is he'd like to rededicate the statue of Portola that sits down in our plaza. Just so you know that statue is a replica of a statue of Portola in Balaguer, which is a city in the foothills of the Pyrenees. That's where he was born. And also he said he would like to go to the Carmel mission to also visit the site of where Father Sarah is today. And what's interesting to me about that is we're celebrating the city of Monterey's 250th birthday. And now we're talking about those two people that were the founders of our city. So to me, that said something. What I'm going to do is take it a little bit different. In 20 years, there's so many things that happen. But I think one of the key things that happened was that we had to do something about the Defense Language Institute, because what was going to happen was we feared, and it did happen. The Army put it on the bracket.
I did. I'm watching it in there on the television.
Was I on? Because I didn't see my face anywhere.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We had enough of you, Peter. But anyway, so what we did was we thought this was going to be something that was going to be a lasting effect if that DLI and Navy Postgraduate School would leave. So what we did was and the Army's the one that put it on the BRAC list. And so we said, oh, in the meantime, the Defense Department took it off the BRAC list. And we said, good news. But the BRAC Commission had said, oh no, we want you to go through us. So, and in that meeting that they were talking about it, which was quite interesting, there was one BRAC commissioner that said, you better tell those people at the DLI to change their license plate, because it could be that they're on their way to Arizona. Fort Huachuca was there, and there was some talk about where they were going to move to Fort Huachuca. So we were starting from the very ground. And so the one thing that we wanted to do to make sure was that our effort to keep it open had to be an all-out effort. We did not want to look back and say we should have done this, we could have done something else. We wanted to say this is something that we are going to make sure that doesn't happen. So we went to the city council. The city council, we knew we were going to need a revenue stream to finance this fight. And so the city council, then we agreed to spend $250,000. And then Pacific Grove and said they would chip in $30,000, and the county chipped in another $40,000. So we had a revenue stream to keep that place open. And we were quite pleased with that. Then we formed a group, a citizens group in Monterey. It was called CORE. And CORE was a group that, hold on, folks, let me just get to this for just a minute. CORE was a group that was a committee for research and education, but it was a high-powered group of not only people from Monterey, but also it was a high-powered group of the region that were there, because everybody knew that everybody is a recipient of what happens at the DLI. So just to give you an example how powerful that group was, there's 9 people on BRAC. And so at the first meeting, we said, how many people, we just kind of we gave the names, and then we kind of went around the room and said, okay, who do you know, or who do you know who you could reference to find out? And it was interesting as we went around the room, most of them had some kind of a connection. Maybe somebody knew somebody, But there was one person that nobody knew, and that was Bob Stewart. He was the CEO and the president of Quaker Oats. Nobody knew him. And so the reason that it was important was we wanted to make sure we could find somebody that knew about this. So I got home and I was just there a short period of time. I got a phone call from Clay Larson. He was on the committee. He says, we found him. And actually he was a member of the Cypress Point golf club, and his sister lived in Pebble Beach. So we were quite pleased to hear that. You might know that we did get a hold of him. And what we wanted to do was we wanted him to be able to come down and see firsthand. Now, the reason that was important was because not all the commissioners would go to each base and then make a decision. And the smaller bases were only going to get maybe one person to come and look, and then they would report back to the BRAC commission itself. So we knew if we could get some other people to see it, we would have a better chance. And so we did get him to come and look at it. And then so the next thing we noticed in watching the commission, we noticed that there was the chairman, who was Jim Crowder, who was the councilman, or not a councilman, but he was a congressman from the state of New Jersey. And so we saw the power that he had. And so we felt it was really important that he was the one that was going to come and look at Monterey. So in the meantime, what we did was we looked at Fred, and we'd already said that he would be the person, he would be the lead person and have the time to do it. So what we did is we gave him, he said it's going to be there 6 months and to do this. And so basically what we did with Fred, we said, okay, that'll be your primary function. You'll be the leader of that. You'll be the person in charge of that. And so he said, okay. He said, but I'm going to need a little help. And so he had Fred Cohn, that was a staff member. So that was his assistant. And of course, we all helped with that. Now, what we told him, and he recognized, and we all recognized, that chairman was important. So somehow we had to get to him. And so this is what would happen. We would kind of follow that commission around, and whenever he was there, Fred and we were there, and Fred would step up during the break or during the halftime or during a recess and have a chance to talk to him. He never talked about what they were talking about. We talked about the DLI. We bumped into him on hallways, wherever he thought he would be, we were there with him. And particularly Fred was there. Till one story that I thought was really interesting, I think you might think it was interesting. We went down to San Diego to watch this BRAC commission in action. And so when we were down there, of course, we saw the power that chairman had. And so we decided that we'd listen to him, and we listened to everybody. And then we were going to fly home. And so we flied home in an airplane, but naturally. But what happened was, when we got to the airport, we saw this congressman that was there, and that was the chairman. And so we watched him. He got a ticket, and pretty soon Fred stepped up to get a ticket. And so we got on the airport, and guess who was sitting right by the congressman? And that was Fred. So Fred captured him for another 40 minutes. And so that the story just kind of moves on and on. But the story is that we also had a consultant, and we asked that consultant, how long do we stay on this? How long do we work? He says, you stay on it till the very end when they meet in Washington. And when they meet in Washington, that's when they'll make the decision.
And Mayor
So
Albert,
we were there.
it sounds like this being able to have this influence and that persistence really paid off to avoid the base realignment and closure of the Presidio of Monterey. That persistence that you were a part of and others really made the difference and avoided the Presidio, which is one of our largest economic engines to prevent that from closing.
But I have to finish here, because what happened was we didn't end there. We won the battle, but we didn't end. What happened was we then asked some of those commissioners to come back. And basically what was important was we wanted to know what we needed to do if we were on another bracket. And they told us what we needed to do was reduce the maintenance cost, reduce the maintenance cost of the DLI. You have to do that. And so what we did is basically we said, and that became what that became was the entrance of the Monterey model. And so that actually happened where we then put that into place at the DLI, and not only that, we were put on the BRAC the next time around. So we had BRAC 2, but we prepared from that time on. From that time of 93, we kept knowing more and more and more about the DLI and the Navy Postgraduate School, because they both went on. Mm-hmm. And so by the time, when we were put on, we were ready. We were really ready. And so what we did was basically, they didn't put us on this time. They put us on, but they did not put us on the BRAC commission that time.
Wow.
So that was a very important thing. There are a couple other things, but anyway.
No, we appreciate that story. It's such an important piece of the role that the city of Monterey and leaders like you have had to influence and preserve our military presence and our and what we value, which is the Presidio and Naval Postgraduate School. I know we've got, for those who are listening in, we actually, I think, have over 100 people watching live this event. We were scheduled to end at 1 o'clock, which was 5 minutes ago, but we still have quite a few more bits of information. Maybe we can wrap up with a few final comments. I know, Mayor Albert, you wanted to talk a little bit about Window on the Bay, and I know we still have to get to Mayor Della Sala as well. So
this will be very, very, very quick. I think something that is really dear to me, and I think the peninsula too, and I think the city of Monterey, and that's the Window to the Bay. That entrance to Monterey was really, as you can see in the picture there, it wasn't much of an entrance to Monterey, and it hit a beautiful beach. And so we started to work on that. We started to buy property until today. What you see is the Window to the Bay, and which is a great asset. There's a park, there's a rec trail that goes around it. And I think all of us are proud of it because we all contributed to that. Mm-hmm. And yes, that was an important, there are many important things.
Right.
Could I just say one other?
Please do.
One other thing that was important was that we were very proud of our marketplace that we have on Tuesdays. Well, that marketplace, we stole that idea. We stole that from San Luis Obispo. I saw it in action down there. And so I thought that would be great for the city of Monterey. So I came back and I got a group of merchants and property owners on Alvarado Street and told them how important that was. And they should go down and see it. And that's what they did. They went down and they saw it. They came back. And of course, we have that every Tuesday, and there's basically thousands of people that go down there every Tuesday. And then I'd just like to finish with one other quick thing, and that has to do with the sister cities, and just saying that we've had many sister cities relationship, and those sister cities are with Nanao and Dubrovnik, and from Japan, and Dubrovnik, and Isola de Fimina from Sicily, and there's others too, but those are the three that I could just I'd just like to mention. There's others too.
No, that's
But
great.
anyway.
I see here's a photo from the Now celebration in 2015. You're there with the delegation from Now Japan. That's great, and we've got other photos here.
Well, actually that's developed into quite a relationship. There's 8 other organizations from here that have relationships with their organizations, like the Rotary, the Jazz Festival, and the Chamber of Commerce. They all have a relationship that goes on there. So it's a big thing, and we enjoy it. But
Yeah.
all of those sister cities are.
That's great.
So anyway, and
yeah.
I would just like to also repeat something that that Mayor Roberson said, was that there are things that it happened in one mayor's regime, and then the next mayor picks it up, and then the next mayor picks it up, which I think is really important and really good. And I think the other thing that needs to be said, and what needs to be said, is that, we talk as mayors about what happened while we were there. But, we had great staffs behind them. We had the community behind them, but behind us. And a lot of things that happened because we had a good relationship with people in the community, and we had a great relationship with the staff, and a hard working staff that worked with us to accomplish all the things that we were able to accomplish in the time that we were there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mayor Albert. Truly appreciate your stories and the impact and the legacy that you've influenced on our community during your tenure. We're going to transition now, and I'll ask Lori to introduce Mayor Chuck Della Sala.
Thank you, Nat. And again, it was so great to see how the sister cities have evolved over the years. All the mayors have been so important in helping those relationships grow. And we're really a big part of Sister Cities International as well, which has been a great support organization. But I'm really, really happy to introduce former Mayor Chuck Della Sala. Chuck served on the council from 2002 to 2014, and as mayor from 2006 to 2014. And he has been able to travel a little bit to at least 1 or 2 of the sister cities, which he'll tell you about. But anyway, welcome, Mr. Della Sala, and thank you so much for being here and being a part of this historic occasion itself.
Well, thank you very much, Lori. I appreciate this opportunity to share some of the significant events that occurred during my tenure as mayor. Prior to my election to mayor in 2002, I served for 10 years on the City of Monterey's Planning Commission. And in that time was able to coordinate with a lot of visionaries who came up with thoughts, ideas, plans to improve Monterey. Monterey is my hometown. I was born and raised here, and I've always felt privileged to have served the people of Monterey. So let's go back in history a little bit. I was elected in November of 2016 to the position of mayor of Monterey. A couple months later, I had the opportunity to travel with 16 members of the Monterey community to one of our sister cities, that was Dubrovnik, Croatia. And the trip to Croatia was a great one. It showed us a lot about what we could implement in the city of Monterey in order to make our community a more enjoyable place to live and visit. The photo that you see on the screen there is the signing that took place of the sister city relationship between Monterey and Dubrovnik. You can see the folks in period costumes, the powdered wigs and the coats and whatnot. That took place in a multi-story opera house, probably 300 to 400-year-old opera house. And there I was, little boy, in a sense, from a small town of Monterey, thrown onto what I consider to be a world stage. There was a orchestra pit, musicians, guards. It was very, very formal, celebratory. And I had to follow a diplomat who spoke about Dubrovnik and its significance in the world. And I could remember sitting in the front row of that opera house thinking, what the heck am I doing here? I'm in a class that I don't belong in. So here I was listening to this gentleman flow with words that followed in with such power. And I was feverishly writing notes so that when I got up there, I wouldn't embarrass the city of Monterey. Because that opera house was filled with clergy, diplomats, you name it, they were there. And here we were talking about the relationship that we would have in order to benefit both our cities. This trip was not funded by the city of Monterey taxpayers. It was funded by USAID, which is, of course, our federal government's international development fund. And we were going to Dubrovnik in order to share what we knew about tourism, the golf industry. And what I saw when I was in Dubrovnik were many, many cafes that had outdoor seating, large plazas that were surrounded by mixed-use buildings where they had the commercial space, the retail space on the ground floor and housing units above it. And so there was our thinking went to how can we incorporate some of these fine features that they enjoy in Dubrovnik into the city of Monterey. And so I think that was really in part the impetus to mixed use development in downtown Monterey. So after my return from that trip to Dubrovnik, a couple months later, was February 7th actually, of 2007, that I received a telephone call. The telephone call was at 4:30 in the morning. And so I looked over to my nightstand, I looked at my telephone, and on my cell phone was the name Fred Muir. So I thought to myself, oh, this can't be good news. Then city manager Fred Muir calling me at 4:30 in the morning. I answered the call and Fred said, and I quote, "Mayor, our downtown's on fire." And so with that, I jumped out of bed, went down to Alvarado Street, and when I got there, there were multiple fire engines there. There was fire service from throughout the peninsula that were called in for mutual aid. 459 Alvarado Street, the TA work building was ablaze. That particular commercial building housed some 21 businesses in it. The firefighters did a yeoman's job in containing the fire to just that structure. They saved the other structures on Alvarado Street. And so with that loss of that significant structure that was on Alvarado Street, that presented us with a hole in the core of downtown Monterey, we started thinking, what next? What should replace that structure? So instead of thinking, well, maybe we should just rebuild it the way it was, our thoughts went to, no, let's do something better. Let's introduce mixed use into the downtown with, again, housing on the upper floors of that building. So in cooperation with the work family, a plan was designed, and we now have a wonderful building there to enjoy on Alvarado Street. Now you can see from, if you go back to the previous slide, you can see that at that time we had developed a downtown specific plan with the purpose of providing a vision for what we wanted in downtown Monterey, to provide the developers of these structures in the future what we expected, so that they would be able to develop plans along that line and get them approved much more quickly. You can see in the lower left-hand corner the outdoor seating by virtue of increased width of the sidewalk. You can see photos. I don't know if that second one from the top is that might be in Santa Monica, I'm not sure, but another display of outdoor activity. So we developed the theme, the signage, the streetscape, the rhythm via planters, via trees and pavers. And what we wanted to do, we wanted to bring a enjoyable walking path from the Coupa Malera adobe at one end of Alvarado Street to the Custom House, the #1 historic landmark in the city of Monterey and for the state of California. And so we opened that up. We widened the sidewalks. We have now we have the outdoor seating. This is a photo of the turning of the dirt. This is the breaking of ground for the new development at 459 Alvarado Street that I mentioned. You can see the beautiful completion that has frontage on both Alvarado Street as well as Tyler Street. So as we went about our business, we improved the plan. Monterey has always been a beautiful place, but it's more beautiful, more vibrant, more enjoyable, more inviting than it has ever been. So from there, we want to move on. You see Cafe Trieste. That was another building owned by the Murata family. Before Cafe Trieste, it was Jew Jim's restaurant. That was also the victim of a fire. And so after that fire, that building was rebuilt, and we have 2 or 3 apartment houses on the second floor at that property. If you go down to Chibo's restaurant, that particular site, there was once a nightclub on the second floor. That was repurposed, and multi-millions dollars were spent in order to put housing units above Chibo's restaurant and the other businesses there. So we now have that theme of mixed use. One other property that we have apartments above now is the Alvarado Brewery on Alvarado Street. So we do have that theme, and we wanted to take that theme all the way down to Custom House, so we would have that rocking trend. Now, in addition to that, we wanted to revitalize the Monterey Conference Center. The Conference Center was approximately 40 years old when the hoteliers got together and decided we need to improve the conference center so that we can have multiple conferences taking place simultaneously in order to deliver a more positive impact for tourism, which is the #1 revenue generator for the city of Monterey. And the thought was, let us make that an iconic structure, one that people could point to, one structure that was well lit in the evening. Now with the LED lighting and the low energy cost to illuminate areas, we decided with the architects, of course, that plaza, the Portola Plaza in front of the conference center, should be illuminated so that could become a gathering place and a point of pride and reference. So the hoteliers thought it was important enough that they would tax themselves in order to pay for that $60 million renovation, so that they could improve the finishes, they could reconfigure the interior space, and make that the pride of Monterey, if you will. And that project took place. It started during my tenure as mayor, and it was completed during Mayor Clyde's tenure as mayor, and we are all very, very proud of that. And there you can see the finished product at night. It's quite a beautiful structure. And then you see in the lower right-hand corner of your screen that sculpture. Those are sardines, and we have water that goes through there. So we did want to bring Monterey Bay into prominence here with the Monterey Conference Center. Monterey Bay obviously being one of the greatest natural assets that the city of Monterey enjoys. Lastly, here is a photo of the International Clement Hotel under construction. This particular development on Cannery Row spanned 3 mayoral tenures. It is built on 3 separate parcels on Cannery Row, the inland side, the street side of Cannery Row, and then on the Wave Street side, we have the garage that houses the automobiles that are needed for the guests who stay at the Intercontinental Hotel, and it is complete with lifts in order to maximize the parking that is available there. If we go back 1 slide, you'll see the plaza area, I believe. 1 more. I guess we don't have it. There we go. This is a slide that I wanted you to see. You can see that there is a large open plaza between the 2 buildings at the Clement Hotel that overlook Monterey Bay. You also have about a 10-foot wide walking corridor. And that was also part of a plan from long ago that we would have every development on the bay side of Cannery Row be accessible to the public, just like it is in the at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, as well as the Monterey Plaza Hotel, so that people from around the world could come and enjoy the grandeur of Monterey Bay. I'd like to simply close by saying, and somewhat of a repetitive comment from my colleagues that were mayors and the current mayor, that no one does this by himself. It is absolutely a team effort. The staff has been wonderful. City Manager Fred Muir in particular was a guiding hand and an expert at getting things done. The community was wonderful. We have, of course, have had our dissenters, but that's okay. We embrace that dissent, and then we try to accommodate it or make people happy. The bottom line is everyone in the capacity of mayor in my memory has come to the position that they want to make Monterey better, and they have done so, and they've done so on the shoulders of their predecessors. And so with that, I thank you for this opportunity to share the significant events that took place during my tenure as mayor, and I look forward to a very, very bright future for the city of Monterey.
Thank you so much, Chuck. The reflections were just amazing. And I know people watching, and they can watch again after at any time. We're going to make this a historical video for people. They're going to really appreciate all this great information and reflections and perspectives from all of you. So thank you so much.
And thank you for being an outstanding member of the staff.
I was, again, like everyone, just absolutely fascinated. And as I said in my introductions, we love and take care of Monterey with you. And I think that's reflected in all of the stories that we've told. I know we're probably over time. So Nat, I think we would like to remind people, if they go to monterey250.org/events, they can learn about the Storyteller series, and they are invited to share Monterey stories, just as the mayors have, and enjoy the slides called Art Recreated, very inspiring and fun. And then some of the activities we unfortunately weren't being able to do because of the pandemic. There was a photo of me and Mayor Peter in front of the mosaic, and there was going to be a presentation by Mike Sovereign. And Mayor Peter, thank you. You are the inspiration and behind that mosaic. You brought it to the city of Monterey, and when we redid the conference center, it was one of the things everybody asked about. When is that mosaic going to come back? And So thank you, Mayor Peter, for that. Obviously, hopefully we're going to be able to join everybody on the lawn, but we'll do that. We will, if it's the 251st year, we'll get back to celebrating Buffalo Soldier Day, our June 3rd. We will bring back our July 4th celebration well into its 4th decade. We will have a public art unveiling of an absolutely spectacular adobe. And you can see the Kara Bird, John Mason, and Lance Bowen. So we look forward to that as well. So I'm going to make a final remark and then have our staff finish up with thank yous. And we maybe have to skip the commercial. We were going to sell you t-shirts. And so we all know Monterey is a beautiful place to live and work and visit. And one of those reasons is because of its history. So as we go forward, we are going to celebrate our small town feeling and our cultural diversity. This is an unusual year because, of course, the pandemic and COVID-19. And then at our meeting last night, we had another person who said we have two pandemics going on right now. And the second one was, of course, the horrific, tragic death of George Floyd, and the peoples who very much want systemic change in our city and throughout the nation, where I'm listening to Colton Middle School having a graduation, and they're doing it from the cars, and then they go up and they receive an award. And I think, what kind of city and country and world do we want to leave them? So we know we need to get to work on that, just as all of us work for the city of Monterey. We need to work on our nation for a cultural change. So each of those children, 14, 15-year-olds, 13 to 15-year-olds, don't have to be afraid to go outside because of what they look like. They have equal opportunity. They can get the jobs that everyone is entitled to. So we have challenges ahead on a local level and on a national and world level. But I know with the spirit that we're sharing today with our history and all of the teamwork, which we keep repeating, the teamwork and working together and helping each other and loving each other and loving our city, we can get there. So maybe we can dedicate this online 250th celebration to be a healing time during these difficult times. So I'll ask our staff, again, thank you so much for helping us put this together. Please share our sponsors and you can close for us.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And indeed, we do love our city and our community and all of us. Just quick few shout outs and thank yous to city staff who put these activities together, including those, we have a few city staff members who've retired or aren't with the city anymore. We've got Dennis Copeland, Shirley Booker, Claire Rigg, Trevor Page, as well as Nancy. And we've got residents, of course. Thank you all residents, business community members, our military partners, education partners, and of course our sister cities in Taiwan, Spain, Japan, Croatia, Turkey, Azerbaijan, and of course Italy. Thank you to our other sponsors. We've got Asonio Construction Management, Granite Rock, Panetta Institute, Monterey Bay Aquarium, the Shake Family, Old Monterey Business Association, HBO, Granite Construction Company, Mahoney & Associates, Inns of Monterey, Monterey County Association of Realtors, Monterey Peninsula Foundation, KRML Radio, Cannery Row Antique Mall, Cannery Row Business Association, and the Cannery Row Company, as well as other sponsors that you have listed here as well. Many organizations and business members who contributed towards the celebration of the Monterey 250, and you see here the final thank yous. We lastly want to say we appreciate everyone for being part of this presentation today. There were a couple of technical difficulties, so we got in a little bit of a late start, but we are planning some more events and activities. You'll hear from us later. Today's event was planned to be a little bit more of a fireside chat, so we may have a chance to schedule another bringing mayors together to have a more informal conversation, but we do hope you enjoyed today's event and activity. So thank you again very much. And I hope you have all a great day, and congratulations to Monterey on 250 fantastic years.
Thank you, Ned.
Yeah,
Thank you, mayors. It has been a real pleasure to be with you.
Likewise.
So
Goodbye,
you got
everybody.
through it all, man. Thanks for setting this up. How did you do that?